Today's topic for this live stream will be nervous system education for relationships. We're going to talk survival identity, mental health, psychology, so-called personality. This is the sequence of how things happen within you, within your nervous system, within your consciousness. So this is the sequence, as we know. This is what your identity consists of, different layers, okay? Then we have feelings and emotions. This is completely unconscious. This is partially conscious because we are getting better at recognizing different emotional states. We are getting better at recognizing what goes on. We are reconnecting, our nervous system are reconnecting. We are reconnecting with our body, so the big movement, somatic movement that is happening, I really appreciate and like, because this is people are becoming more conscious how their psychology is rooted in physiology, right? Then we have the ego story, narrative, right? And then we have actions, behaviors, choices, habits, so you are guys getting better at recognizing where you are on this, right? You are getting better at recognizing your states, but the relationship, your relationship with yourself, it's at the core here, right? So if that state is survival state, then you're not living from the authentic self. You are. So I'm going to do it in a slightly different way now. State, then, because I want to show a different side to it. Maybe we're going to do it that way. Well, I'm doing it that way, so this is yourself, this is your ladder, let's call it, the ladder of identity, okay? And most people operate from here, and this is what we call personality. This is what we identify it with. We identify with the story, with the narrative of our ego. We identify with what we do, where we work, where we live, with our passport. So think about yourself, state of the nervous system. Okay. This is what we've been obsessing about. Who you are is your thoughts. Who you are. So we over-identify with the mind, with the ego story, which comes obviously from our states, emotions and feelings. And if the nervous system is in survival, so fight, flight, freeze, fawn, or hide, so think about where you are, And okay, there's some questions there. Hi, hello R. Why some days we feel really sad, bad, and others we don't, related to hormones? We don't, it's related to hormones. Your body is really complex system, right? So of course there will be other processes at play. I mean, it's the most advanced, sophisticated ecosystem on the planet that we don't understand. I mean, no culture, no religion ever understood it truly. I mean, some probably did, but I'm very concerned with everyday life, like how we live. So when it comes to understanding what drives our, in terms of hormones, that would have a big impact on how our nervous system is feeling, right? So obviously, menstrual cycle and testosterone in men. So when that dips, obviously, there's a lot of knowledge about that. But again, it's all related to how you perceive yourself and how connected to your body you are. Because it's one thing knowing that something is going on. Oh, I'm before my period, so if I'm aware of my behavior, then if I'm aware of the fact that this can alter my behavior, that's a very different story. And again, what is it? Self-awareness. Physical, emotional, mental, etc. Okay? So it's not about knowing absolutely everything and nitty-gritty of everything that goes on in your body. That's not really the case. It's about knowing yourself. And everybody is slightly different, even though we are very similar system in terms of the architecture, in terms of the mechanism behind it. So but we are express it differently. So our consciousness expresses things differently. We're just switching near my period. Of course. Me too. Yeah. Of course. You wouldn't be. That's natural. That's natural. It's there for a reason. I mean, there are so many different layers to it, to your biology, that it's incredible. So, even that, you can be a different person. That's the thing. That's the biggest lie in psychology. That you have a personality, that your behavior is driven, which actually confirms my teaching, what you just brought up, that what creates our experience is not from the outside, it's from the inside out. It's the state of the nervous system. So I'm just talking about one, about survival identity, but there are so many biological processes. We would be having a completely different conversation. And this is what I did in therapy with people. If someone was, for example, pregnant, I would be talking to them in a different way. If someone had just had a baby, therapy wouldn't be as relevant anymore, because I would be very aware that the body of that person is recalibrating, has just grown another human inside. So I'm not going to sit there and pretend that, talking about childhood is now a good thing to do, unless they obviously want to. But guess what? They never did want to. So, and I actually took a part. I was a volunteer at this group for women with postnatal depression. And it wasn't about, attachment styles or anything. It was about keeping their nervous system safe and stable, so they feel seen. They can have, because it was like 3 or 4 hours in the community center. It wasn't about really talking to them about the issue, but it's about recalibration of the nervous system. So all these things are important. That's why you need to become competent in your nervous system. Like, what do you need from me today? That's my favorite question. That's why you need to educate yourself about it. Because then knowing that your anxiety, for example, is being produced by the inner state, it gives it a completely different flavor. Once you understand and you're certain that there's nothing wrong with you, the biggest lie there is in psychology is that when people have depression or anxiety, there's something wrong with them. Even though it's the most natural reaction, even though it's the most natural reaction to the environment, right? The only people who don't suffer with, and again, that's a problematic word, because the way we frame things is really important. So the only people who don't have anxiety and depression, who don't have sensations from the body and, they just flat all the time, are psychopaths. They have no emotional awareness, they're completely disconnected, and that's a pathology. Right? So you guys have a little chit chat. So if you operate from this only, as you've been told to, like you have a personality, is fixed or whatever, I like that, I don't like that, and you have no awareness of why your nervous system functions the way it functions and how it functions. Your nervous system has been shaped and forged in the family dynamic. As we know, those family dynamics are not healthy, and nervous system makes certain decisions. We're going into survival. We have to be doing, in order to survive the environment, I have to become this way, right? And then, if you're not aware of what goes on in your nervous system, you end up having a double life, what I call a syndrome of double life, double identity. There's a completely different story inside of you, and there is a completely different story outside of you. So, because we're not being taught about these things, there's no emotional literacy whatsoever in the society and in our culture. We have no awareness of nervous system responses. So then you're completely unaware of this and you only function from this. So you are functioning as a persona. An archetype, right? But we're going to call it a persona today because I want you to start thinking about other personas. So this sort of knowledge is not only useful for you, how you can live your life better and really understand and decode how you function, but also it can help you with relationships and in relationships, who you date, what to pay attention to, because you shouldn't never pay attention to what they talk about and how they talk about, yes, but a person can say anything, right? It's the story that the body is telling will tell you more about this person. Once you have the awareness and understanding of yours, your intuition, once you can communicate with your nervous system, I'm smiling because it's just mind-blowing. Once you understand that the persona is created as a result of the nervous system, and you have that intuition, because once you come out of survival, you are much more in touch with yourself and with your emotions, and you can read the signals from the body, because your nervous system will react to their nervous system, and you will know how to read the signs. So your intuition then can come online, because normally you are suppressing it, you are ignoring it, even your heart, you're ignoring it. Okay, this is what we are being trained as, conditioned to ignore ourselves, to ignore our deeper nature. So then you can't really read the signs, and your body knows the truth a lot sooner than your mind, because your mind is conditioned not to be judgmental. I really don't like that, because actually your judgment is the only thing that can guide you in life, that can orient you to things you want. It's very simple. Once you know about these things, it's very simple. Okay? So for dating, for relationships, if you're a parent, if you have children or you're planning to have children, then that becomes really crucial, because you then operate from the center, you don't operate from the persona. And you can spot these people who operate from the persona. Because what you know about people at this point, like what we know about people and relationships about, like at this point, like, you know, how people say, oh, he was a really nice person, or she's a really nice person. Like, people don't operate from the center, people operate from the persona. So don't fool yourself. You know nothing about people, right? If we knew things about each other, if you really understood our nature, how we operate, we wouldn't have the situation we have. If people really understood psychology, if people really understood the nervous system, like, you know, all this research, all this therapy, so many people are going to therapy now and have gone to therapy for years. Yes, judgment needed to guide us in life, I mean, yeah? So you could replace the word judgment with discernment, right? Reading how you feel in your body in the presence of someone is your wisdom, is your intuition. It's like, do I really want this? Do I need this? Is that what makes me feel calm? That's why I love the butterflies in the stomach. Very often when you're meeting someone, this is stress. This is your body kicking off, telling you, no, this is, right? But what do? We believe the story. Right? We believe the story. We are, oh, because she told me to, because he told me to, right? So, and even sometimes, yeah, we completely sort of exile the body. We ignore the body of ourselves and of someone. Working on mental health is so exhausting, but it's worth it. That's excellent. When you're connected and when your higher consciousness is coming online, I just want to answer this question about working on mental health is so exhausting. It is exhausting because this is not what familiar, so you're fighting resistance at the beginning. Because you are undoing, you're realizing actually how much bullshit you've had to consume so far, and you're realizing, so that's your body kicking off, and because your nervous system does function, you will find out from the course if you haven't already, does function on the principle of familiar, right? What's familiar, then again, every level, right? What's familiar, then what's different, then that requires energy, but only at the beginning. Any change that you're trying to introduce, right? And you go into the root of the problem. And anyone who does gardening will know how difficult it is to uproot a plant, right? To actually sometimes remove it or remove like sick part of the root or whatever, right? Because it is like, you are like a tree. No, that's not a repeat, that's slightly different. This is relationships. So I want you to think about the fact, I'd sort of admit your ignorance. It's very freeing and liberating to actually admit to yourself that the way you were looking at other people and the way you were looking at yourself, it's hard to do it, but it's very liberating. It is not entirely true, right? Or it's not the whole truth, because one of the mistakes that we make, we're very arrogant in thinking that just because we have so much knowledge or because we are educated, we know it all, right? No, we don't. Again, if we knew things, people would be very happy, people would be thriving, but people are not thriving. And you would be thriving, but you're not thriving. So there's kind of, I think part of the problem is because we live from our heads, we don't live from our hearts and from our nervous system. We are disconnected from this, so our ego, our narrative, our mind, as we talked about before, is very open and is very prone for manipulation. Change is difficult indeed. Only at the beginning. Change is only difficult at the beginning. And remember, change is the only constant in life. So if you learn to navigate change, that's a life skill for whatever then you open yourself up to. We're just about surviving, not thriving. That's my issue. That's module part 4 of my course, from survival to thrival. So we live from this, right? Even when you talk to people, like people will use their name, where they work, how old they are, and that's not really deep enough, right? So there is no, and if you live in a state of disconnection from yourself, you can't really truly connect with anyone else. That's the rule of the nervous system. Nervous system in survival is a locked system, so you're locked in with yourself. It's very difficult to connect. I mean, it's impossible to connect with others if you're not connected with yourself, including your children. Right? If you don't know how you operate, you also don't know how other people operate. It's very easy to deceive you because you will be very confused. Survival identity is very confusing. You don't know what's what. That's why people don't have relationships anymore, because it's confusing. They've been disappointed too many times. You know, everything seems to be going great. So that real connection, deep connection, is not possible with others if you're not connected with yourself, right? And majority of people are disconnected. Because again, they don't live from their bodies, they live from their personas, they live from their outer persona, the persona that has been created. Very easily seen online. In survival, my relationships seem fake to me. Yes, because survival identity, if you're disconnected and scattered, your attention is scattered, if you're not rooted and grounded in yourself, then you will be suspicious. Because guess what? If your nervous system is under threat, so trying to survive, then people will be a threat. Your nervous system will read everyone as a threat. Because you want trust. Because a threatened animal doesn't trust for a reason. We understand it with animals. Humans are the same. An animal, a human that is threatened, doesn't trust anyone. And now, all the trust, if there was any left in terms of the system and people who are governing us, is gone. I don't know about you guys, but certainly in my case. So no system is going to support the narrative in which you're rooted, connected and safe. Because safety means trust. Safety means being okay with who you are, not hating yourself, not disliking yourself, being okay with yourself, not needing anyone or anything, right? So again, that's the broader narrative, the social narrative of why you are wanted in survival identity, because then you are a perfect person, because you're not trusting, you're very suspicious, you think like everything is fake, because it is. I mean, most things are. And if I'm honest, like most people are living in survival, most, like especially, most people live in survival. Because again, it doesn't matter where you are, it's how your nervous system is. So if your nervous system has been shaped and programmed during childhood, then that system goes with you. The survival identity goes with you, and you will perceive everything. You will perceive yourself in a certain way as not deserving, not enough. What is wrong with me? Mental health, that's the narrative. What is wrong with me? I don't want to have anxiety, but I have anxiety. I'm weak. Like people think that because they have depression or some kind of personality disorder, that makes them weak, especially men, right? It's like, it's total misunderstanding. Hello, Sunny. Trust the system. How do we fix this? Ooh, big question. First of all, it's awareness, right? It's awareness how we operate. It's awareness about the nervous system. It's getting into your body, getting grounded in your body daily. Having mental health hygiene. Understanding that we've been lied to, we've been conditioned to think about ourselves as people in a very damaging and disempowering way. Damaging. I'm going to use this word a few times because I want you to get this. This is not benign. This is actually very damaging. Because if you make a human being think that for whatever reason they're wrong, they don't, that's all. Like with mental health diagnosis, I have an issue with, that is it. That's your diagnosis. That's your part of your identity, okay? That's your explanation. And there's no why. What do I do with it? No one is educating you about how to really address your nervous system. No one is. I haven't seen it yet. Even in GCSEs. Now maybe, but a year ago it wasn't. The nervous system wasn't included. And I know this from a teacher who was outraged when I taught her this in therapy. She inquired about this. What we should do with all the information that we learned about mental health in the past. Take your pick. I like my rituals for releasing bullshit. Sometimes I write things down on a piece of paper and burn it over the sink. Sometimes I just like, it's indifference. I'm just leaving it. Whatever I found, and trust me, I've spent years and years in some of the jails, some of the prisons of information and new science, right? So, and the way I was trained, it was, that was very old information. So it's about growing into yourself and slowly learning to trust yourself, because your intuition and your higher self is always present. It's just not online. Higher consciousness is there. It's just, you've been stuck on this, right? You've been stuck on this lower level, lower vibration. So knowing this, as I said, it's going to create a ripple effect, because your state creates your identity and your identity creates your reality, right? The way you relate to people, places, things, and most importantly, to yourself, because your state creates a self-concept, okay? That's what needs to be upgraded. That's what needs to happen, right? Step by step, and those steps are very unique to you. I don't know who you are, I don't know how you operate. You need to start becoming curious about what is going on and why. You need to start meeting yourself where you are, not when I have more time, when this happens. You're never going to be ready. That's one of the ways in which you're being controlled. Oh my God, I'm not ready. It's too difficult. I don't have the time. They don't want you to have the time. Even though you spend 100% of your time outside of yourself. So it's about going inward and understanding how your consciousness is constructed, how your architecture of your inner world is really manifesting in your life, because it's from the outside in you create your life, not from, it's not like life happens to you, you happen to life. Okay, there are different stages of consciousness. Another way to look at it is, at the lowest level, the worldview is life happens to me. Slightly higher is life happens by me. So this is what I'm trying to get you guys from life happens to me to life happens by me. So I want you to realize that you are the maker of your experience. Your nervous system is the factory of your life and of you. You can create whatever you want, but you need to elevate your sense of self, elevate your consciousness, expand your consciousness, and upgrade your self-concept. Because at the lowest levels of consciousness, it's from the inside out life happens. Yeah. Because the lower levels are where the shame, despair, apathy is, right? I lost my ears on the wrong information, yes. Join the club. Even when we elevate our self-concept, we can get dragged back like crab bucket effect. Yes, Sunny, of course. But this doesn't it happens for two reasons. First of all, when things happen, so another crisis or some kind of difficult experience, your nervous system will pull you back to the thing that has worked in the past, back into survival. And that's when you're sick, when I don't know, when something happens, something big happens, right? So people very often in therapy, they would say, oh my God, I lost this job and I think again that I'm starting from the beginning. Because again, when your nervous system feels under threat, you go back to that smaller identity, let's say, right? You go back to that old identity because your higher self gets a bit threatened. So it needs to happen when you expand yourself and you upgrade your self-concept. You need a time to stabilize and sort of crystallize your idea of self, because your idea of self is constantly, things are pulling you up, you wouldn't be listening. Things are pulling you up. You're already feeling that whatever you've been told, that's not the whole story. Nervous systems are recalibrating on their own. Consciousness is growing. There's a big shift collectively happening. Media, politics, everything is changing. Look at your thoughts 5 years ago and now. How much more can you see? How much more can you understand? There's a huge difference, right? And another reason why we go back very often to survival identity, crab bucket effect, is because the self, self really likes to feel certain, and we get attached to our identity. Think about the old shoes. Yeah, this is all the old chair. Old chair is falling apart, but you love it because it's yours. So you would be reluctant. A lot of people function like this because we get attached to the idea of self because it feels like us, and change is scary. So when you suddenly experience something new, right? So money is a very good example. Lotto winners are a very good example. Their identity was poverty and just living, on a small amount of money every month. And they win the lottery. And they lose it all within a year. The statistics are really frightening, right? Why does it happen? Because their identity was not updated and it became overwhelming. This is not how they see themselves. They can't take responsibility. They can't connect the dots. It's overwhelming. That's why they lose it. So the expansion is not only fake and from the outside, and your nervous system has not calibrated, so you will sabotage your development. You will sabotage your growth. And that happens everywhere. It's almost like if you don't calibrate yourself and your nervous system for bigger things, you will be stuck where you are. It's all about upgrading your identity and the sense of self, slowly at your pace. So identity upgrade, think those terms. Wish I recorded this live. It actually makes sense because it's not the mind, it's the body who keeps the scars. Of course, the body is the boss. That's the key I need to learn, right? So, it is like, the way I like to look at it is that inner work is all about approaching this as a house that you've inherited. Imagine you have a house, a home, inner home, right? And doing inner work is like, okay, I've inherited this from my parents, this house, okay? Your nervous system is like a plumbing and electricity in one. And then you enter this house with your awareness. You realize, oh my God, I have this thing inside of me, right? I have this house. And now I need to upgrade it to my specification. It's full of shit from other people's. It's full of things from other generations. When you think about the psyche, the basement is like your past, and the second floor is like your future. But you normally live on the ground floor, and the kitchen and living room is like your mind, the lower mind, right? Where you spend the most time with. The thing is, with experience from our dysfunctional families, it's full of stuff that doesn't belong to you. And then you're asked to live there, right? But nothing is working properly. You don't like how things work, but you settle there. You're like, all right, well, I got it for free, so... And upgrading your identity is like renovating the house. It's actually going inside and thinking, right, what do I want this to look like in 6 months' time, a year, or when I retire? What do I want this space to be like? And you consuming and allowing other people inside the house every day, other belief systems, other ideas, people with their chaotic minds, right? It's like having a party all day long. Not being able to rest, not being able to decompress. I'm not even talking about the garden. You don't go to the garden, right? Because you're so busy tripping over the past, because just imagine, all the generations before you, someone always added something, and they left you, and then they died, or you left, right, the system. But the psyche is full of things from the past. It's full of things from your parents. After I started the course, I started having dreams about my childhood and how my family treated me. Wow. Good. Your subconscious mind, I've got goosebumps. Wow. It's not strange, it's natural, it's good. Wow. So your inner space, this is why change is so uncomfortable, because you don't want to do the work, you want the outcome, you want the results, and we live in an era of convenience, everything we've lost the life skill of tidying up our spaces. We just add and buy, right? So we really don't operate from the idea what we like or what our style is. We get what's fashionable, and the process of life of cooking, living, and being who you are. The same with isolation. This is what gets me as well. People are lonely, right? And loneliness is being demonized. Never in the history of humanity, people were surrounded by so many people and so many things and concepts and the noise. That's why a lot of nervous systems are overwhelmed. And we need to be on our own. Unless your kids are small, right? Which is the only time where you really cannot expect to be on your own a lot. But other than that, you need to be with yourself. You need to observe your thoughts. You can't have anyone distracting you from that all the time, right? The busy schedule, that, you know, seeing everyone, now responding to, like, having all these groups on WhatsApp, all these channels, all these, like, the mind is really not, doesn't want that. Again, it's like, so imagine your mind is like a kitchen counter in that inner space of yours. And you cooking 25 dishes every day, right? And these are your thoughts. And this is your kitchen, right? So just imagine how busy your psyche is, and it shouldn't. It should be spacious and clear, and you should be in touch with the higher part of yourself, because otherwise you behave, your body is running the lower instincts are running the show. If you don't upgrade your identity and you don't take ownership of that space, other people will do it for you, because there are plenty of people who want you to think that you belong to them, and who want to hijack your thinking. And plenty of systems who want to hijack your sense of self, where they want you to think that it's not possible. Let's just, like, and the same with mental health. Let's just give it a name that no one understands. And let's just tell people, you know, I'm not going to go very deeply into this, but mental health diagnosis is actually manufactured. As soon as a certain, what's the word for when a medication is, I forgot the word. Patented. Medication for different conditions are patented. As soon as the patent is finished, then they're going to come up with another set of symptoms, usually recycled anxiety and depression, and then they're going to match it with some kind of pattern of the mind, and they're going to make it into personality disorder. Even the personality disorder, like BPD, for example, it's certain fears and anxiety and depression. Fear of intimacy, feeling every emotion very, very intensely, right? Fear of abandonment, all mixed up together, and you've got BPD, right? Bipolar, anxiety and depression. It used to be called manic depression. A lot of things. ADHD, freeze mode. I mean, on steroids. What about the genetic lottery most of us lose? What do you mean by that? I think most people, again, it's interesting, your narrative, but why would you think that? Gene expression, it's up to you which genes you express. I'm not talking about physical things, right? It's interesting. Tippy. I was diagnosed with ADHD. Often I wonder if it's freeze mode, CPTSD. Talk about bipolar and the nervous system. I was diagnosed with ADHD often, like, I think you're new here, so you probably didn't know, but I could be easily diagnosed with ADHD, like, and medicated. ADHD is unexpressed creativity, in my opinion. As soon as you start expressing your true self, things you like doing, and allowing your higher consciousness to express, a lot of ADHD dissolves, right? Because it's not like you don't have, and there is a shift in understanding now in the even framing ADHD, because it's creativity, it's scattered focus. Someone else's under one of my posts suggested this, and I really liked it and stuck with me. It's like having 5D brain in 3D reality, which is true, because you see more, you understand more, you have the inner vision, your consciousness is already upgraded. You're just keeping a lid on it with your idea of yourself. That's another reason why people don't do it, because it's scary to feel powerful. It's scary to see yourself as a creator. If you, for umpteen years, was trying to tell yourself, no, I'm not creative, I don't like, no, it doesn't bring the money, so I'm not going to do it, right? I bet you have at least 3 unexpressed, you're very gifted. So CPTSD, again, combination of the survival state, right? And even though nervous system, we all have it, we all express each of the states, survival states, slightly different, right? There are some commonalities, but it's really unique to each one of you, because you are unique. And what's unique about you is your heart, what's in your heart, which you're not going to get to within mental health framework and everything we've been told about you, because you've been separated from your soul 100 years ago by psychiatry, where people, it doesn't matter history, but so that spiritual dimension of human experience has been totally removed, right? And no one is teaching about the psyche anymore. Everyone talks about habits and shit like this, even though you're like, what? So there is a spiritual dimension, you've been like separated from it, and as soon as you understand your anxiety, your ADHD in the spiritual terms, a lot of things will click. That's so interesting. Yeah. Well, medication didn't work for me. Yeah, be grateful for that. Right. Talk about bipolar and the nervous system, please. Medication didn't. Well, that's so interesting. Do I talk about bipolar? Okay. Dysregulated nervous system. So you've got fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and hide. As I keep on saying, first is state, then is the emotional thing, right? So you've got emotional layer, and then you've got the mind, the narrative of the mind, and you've got then behaviors and choices, okay? So BPD, it's basically a trauma response, but the nervous system is so dysregulated that it goes haywire. Normally people have baseline state, or they can identify themselves with, maybe fight, and then they sometimes go into hide, the depression. So this is anxiety and this is depression. Nervous system of a person with bipolar can go like this in the space of a day. This is the fastest way I can answer it. So, connection between BPD and fibromyalgia, please. Again, it's just nervous system is haywire, because what you've experienced, BPD, is all about abandonment. Your nervous system, I've got goosebumps, experience so much abandonment, and it's trying to predict, come close, you're seeking closeness, but you can't get it. And the narrative, the subconscious narrative is, they have abandoned me so many times that now I'm going to be the one abandoning them. So that's the narrative of the mind, of this state. That's the interpretation of this state. right? So everything together. Fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and hide. And it can happen in the space of a day. Plus it's very intense, plus you feel everything times 100, because it's just dysregulated nervous system. And again, how do you get your diagnosis? Based on your thoughts and actions. That's my point. That's my problem. Thank you, TP. Connection between BPD and fibromyalgia. How would I approach this? I am going to say this. People with any sort of diagnosis of mental health and fibromyalgia in this case, they had to be strong for a very, very long time. And there's years and years of suppressing emotions. And being strong and surviving and being in this soldier warrior mode where you haven't been able to process emotions, when you're not able to process, again, really extreme form of survival identity. A lot of trauma, a lot of pain that was never heard and seen. And then the body, it's fibromyalgia, is psychosomatic. So there's no physical proof, but your body aches, right? Everything and everywhere, it just aches. So it's related to trauma. BPD, same thing. It's almost like BPD is a mental component of the body that had been in pain, physically, emotionally. I need to do this because if I say these things, then they flag it up. We can fix PTSD with regulating our nervous system. Yes, we can. So again, the body is the feeler, the body is the experiencer. So if the body has been through a lot and is very dysregulated, and remember, I'm just talking about, I don't go deep, like the hormones, everything, the ecosystem has been under storm, under threat. So you cannot expect a system that has been poisoned with so many bad energies, bad experiences, never had a chance to be celebrated, never had the proper connection with another human, loved in a way that you needed to be loved, unconditionally, right? You were always judged, tormented physically, emotionally and mentally. You cannot expect your nervous system to work. You cannot expect your mind to function, right? And again, this is why I don't go deep in the course, or this is why I don't go deep, during live streams, because even to go deeper into what has happened to your body, to really validate for yourself and to come out of denial, which is a protective mechanism, the persona of the ego, like, oh, it didn't happen, so exiling your experience. It needs to happen when you regulate it. That's why what I used to do in therapy, like if someone came to therapy during their lunchtime, I wouldn't go very deep, because things come up, and it's very difficult, it's very easy to fall apart. So in order for you, wait a second, sorry, but I just received a message. In order for you to truly meet yourself on a deeper level that is probably needed, because I do realize, like, I know people have a lot of pain, I know people have a lot of stories, very painful stories, and I always talk to you guys about writing them down and releasing them from your system. That's very helpful. But your nervous system needs to be regulated for this. You cannot be exhausted and tired and then talk about what happened to you, right? To close the loop, you need to get stronger. To close the loop, you need to start addressing yourself on a deeper level. You need to upgrade your identity, because you're stuck here. So you can't really go into the past unless, look, the art did the course and she's doing my course and the memories are coming back. So because your mind will never give you more than you can handle. That's why it should be respected. Your nervous system is the wisest system there is. That's your higher intelligence. So first we need to make it safe in everyday life and see what it gives us to work on, right? And it has to happen slowly. I think if someone has been through a lot, it takes about 12 months of almost everyday work that needs to become your mental hygiene, that needs to become your emotional and spiritual hygiene, right? But also it cannot happen at 12 on a Thursday, because your nervous system doesn't work on a schedule, on your schedule or on your therapist's schedule. Your nervous system works on your identity. Are you ready for an upgrade? Are you ready to release some of that stuff? Or is it still a threat to your relationships, for example, right? That's why partners of people who are in therapy didn't like it, right? Because very often an upgrade to identity is a threat to your relationships. Hello. Thank you. You're very welcome. Growing up with guilt tripping all the time then become a habit that you start blaming yourself. Yes, of course. Because this is what happens. Children internalize all the emotions that are happening in the house. So, if you shame someone, if you humiliate someone for long enough, they will feel shame. They've done nothing wrong or to be ashamed of, but they will feel shame. If you, right, again, this is the programming. If you guilt trip someone for long enough, then, children especially, then they will feel guilty. If you gaslight someone for long enough, if you tell them, if you dominate them for long enough, if you're dominated for long enough, it's only in your mind, you just made it up, then you start questioning your own reality. That's the sickness of our society. That's the sickness of other people. And that's, again, another evidence for my teachings, that people can get into your mind. Because you live in this lovey-dovey, unicorns and rainbows reality that people who are nice. Or, you don't understand that the persona, outer persona, has nothing to do with how people are. That's why people end up in narcissistic abuse. That's why people respond to love bombing. Oh, if he's love bombing me, then he loves me. Right? No. Again, right? This is really deep knowledge. Yeah, I had to break from a 5-year relationship. Exactly. My partner told me it was me. Of course he did. Right? That's the sickness of the ego, which is my next stage, right? That I'm going to talk about the ego a lot. because that is amazing. That's one of my favorite topics, but it's big. I had BPD, empath, fibromyalgia, and he was a narcissist. Well, yeah. So the survival identity, it's not here now, because that was in previous life. Again, thank you very much, Meryl, because this is what I've been saying to all the people who come to my lives. That survival identity makes you a perfect prey, because your attention is not where it should be. You disconnected from your intuition, and you will be like, oh, you know, you will be very easily manipulated into belief systems. And guess what's narcissism? Narcissism is a belief system that is very rigid and black and white, where this person deserves everything and you deserve nothing. Exactly. Right? So just to further motivate you to get into the nitty-gritty of your nervous system. Because only when you're connected, calm, social, you can use your intuition, you can really speak, you can listen to your heart, because your body speaks to you all the time. My body knows sooner than I know stuff with my mind. So, but now when I'm regulated, when I wasn't, like when I was still living in survival identity, and I was still a therapist, mind you, so I was working from my head. I was working from this, I identified with the intellectual, brainy part of me. And I didn't know what my needs are. I was living in fight mode. I was working myself to the ground. Like everything I do 1,000,000%. And the only way for me to decompress now is to disconnect from absolutely everything and everyone. And go inwards, and I go into my mountains, and there is no network there, and I just decompress completely, and I come back as a different person. And then I come back home, and I only interact with things and people that I choose to, right? So that's why I don't do any trends on TikTok. I only record stuff when I'm in a certain mind frame and my body is calm. So I don't do things from urgency, right? Because that was my thing. Urgency and planning and rescuing everyone and everything, right? But guess what? My upgrade costed me a lot of friendships. Oh, that's my favorite one. I even told him I would say if he got help. That's another thing, like trying to change someone. Which brings me beautifully to the topic I did want to talk about. Because this is what you date, guys. That's you. And then you have another nervous system. And they have their own state. They have their own emotions and feelings. And they have their own narrative. Ego, mind. So, there is another persona. And this is what you date. You don't date right? You don't date a human you date and their nervous system. And if they are unconscious about this, and if they're not curious, if they're not self-awareness, and they have none, right? Then, and your nervous system, well, the nervous systems do communicate. If you spend some time together, you live together, you sleep together, then, it's really important for you to know that other people are either dysregulators or regulators. And chemistry is dysregulation. You should be looking for someone who makes you feel calm and regulated for a prolonged period of time. Especially, not the restaurants, not the holiday, not when things are okay. Because this is where you live from the persona. The true capacity of the nervous system gets revealed when there is stress. Because this is where you're going to see the real person. Okay? So, being narcissistic means having a very unhealthy relationship with your ego. So being completely possessed by your ego. And ego has different states. It can be a victim, it can be a perpetrator. Right, so it's a dimension of different states. But, if someone is narcissistic, let's say, and it's the grandiose narcissism, then their main assumption is they're right, you're wrong, and they're very rigid and black and white, and they will do everything for being right, including destroying you and your sense of self. Another way of saying this, it's an energy vampire. Right? So, look who showed up, Greg. This stream always puts me to sleep early. So I was talking about ego. So ego always thinks they have the right to express their opinion, and their opinion is important. Right? So, there you go. And it's more important than the others, because they have the right to override yours and dominate you. Ego is all about dominance. Ego is all about tyranny, right? So it's one person's cult. And what a lot of... I talked about this with my husband this morning, I think it was. I used to say he stole my sunlight. Of course he did. Right? It's like being in survival identity makes you especially people pleasers. All the people pleasers I've worked with, codependent people pleasers, you are easily coerced into some kind of power because you respond to that power. You think, it's narcissistic people have charisma usually, right? So you don't have that discernment. It's like really captivating for you and mesmerizing for you because you don't have a sense of self. So you're looking for your sense of self is very fragile. So it's like depends who you're with. So you're not centered around, you're not rooted in yourself, you're not grounded in yourself. Therefore, it will be very difficult to hijack you, very easy to hijack you. Can narcissistic ever reach a stage of good mental health? Are you still looking after him, aren't you? You are still entangled, I'm afraid, with him. His mental health is okay, according to him. Right? Am I wrong? Did he see a problem? Yes, I still miss him and I broke up over a year ago. Yeah. It's very obvious. So you still think, what if he went to therapy? What if he worked on his mental health? If he was willing to, he would have by now. Right? I know it's difficult to understand. I'm not going to put you on the spotlight here. And then he says he will change. Of course, to get you... Of course, it's a vicious cycle. And he never does. Of course, why would he change? Ego doesn't change. Ego doesn't change. Anyone with a narcissistic mother knows that. If ego doesn't change for their children, they never change for a random person. Listen, nervous systems are autonomous systems. Right? Why do you think, and normally narcissistic personality is created over years, for whatever reasons, different reasons. Why do you think you come into someone's life and you want the nervous system to change and their ego, you want to get inside of them and change their assumption? Why? Why? He lies in therapy. Of course. I mean, I'm very surprised that he went. Yeah, but that's what they think. Yeah. I've met them. Yeah. So, you see, how survival identity... I'm not going to put you on the spot here. He still calls me. Block him. So you can't grieve. That's the problem. That he's got the right to your emotions. Right? So he really doesn't care about you. He has wasted his chance with you. But he still wants to... He wants to control and coerce your emotions. And he's successful. Because here you are, a year later, trying to understand it, trying to find an explanation. So you are still entangled with him, which just confirms my first hunch. He dials, and the calls come through. I don't know what that means. So you see, thank you very much for sharing your story, but this is exactly that. We are dating and we are in a relationship with other nervous system. And if that nervous system is dysregulated or it has some kind of story and history and that person has no self-awareness, is not willing to look at themselves, is not willing to work on themselves, is not willing to... you have no influence over that person. You can only impact your nervous system, no one else's. If you can impact or influence someone else's nervous system, and if it's not your child, there is something wrong. That person has real issues, right? So it's all about having a discernment who has a strong sense of self, healthy sense of self, who is really aware of their identity, right? Because the identity is a fluid concept. I know you might be thinking, not really. So your identity is a fluid concept, right? Your identity creates your experiences and your experiences create your reality, right? Other way of saying this is personality creates your idea of yourself, and this is how you get attached, or this is how you also get aversion. So, for example, a person who is in fight mode, right, they won't like people who are calm, collected, and they don't talk too much, because their nervous system will be irritated by it. The same with people in flight mode who are introverted, or flee the scene, don't like intensity. They have a lot of depth, but they don't like people who are too intense. So flight people really don't like fight people, right? for a reason, because they don't match, right? So if you know your states, then every time, I had a client talking to me the other day and she goes, I went on a date and I could recognize, that was so fun, that he was in a flight mode because he was avoiding answering some questions and, you know, he was detaching, and I was like, hold on a minute, right? Okay, that was like third date or fourth date or whatever. So it's not about that. It's about trusting your nervous system, because once your nervous system is regulated and you get your it's like only then when you regulated and you're not operating from the ego story or the narrative, the conditioning, but you understand that your mind is a creative mind, right? So you know how I write them. So your mind is, you've got higher mind and you've got lower mind. People live here, that's your conscious awareness, right? But if you are regulated and then you don't live in your lower mind, you stop consuming narratives and concepts, and you really can entertain yourself, you can connect to the higher mind and see what you really want to do with your life and who you really want to be. So you identify with higher consciousness, creative consciousness. Then you are really connected. Your field is coherent, another word for it, a new age word. Your field is coherent, then you will be very quickly able to detect who is not matching you. And the best feeling in the world is when you get two nervous systems that are regulated or close enough, and then you get stronger together, happier together, more joyous together, and you create a relationship and a life that is expansive, because you identify with the higher consciousness, you've upgraded the self-concept. Plus, you know, they should overlap, but not completely. Everyone should have a sense of space, physically, mentally, emotionally. The idea that somehow we should live in each other's pockets, that's enmeshment, that's not healthy, right? You should be able to function independently and together. That's a healthy human being that doesn't rely on you to regulate their mood, and you don't have to rely on them to actually feel joyous, right? You constantly, and again, very often that's survival identity. People are like, I need to keep checking on him. Like, why? Right? Or, I want him to write me a message every morning. Okay, but like all the time, like I want him to message me once he gets to work. Like, this is a really strange idea. Again, you are relying on another nervous system to regulate you, right? And that's awareness, having a sense of control and stability, external locus of control with someone else. It's really risky. It's really risky and destabilizing, because, well, guess what? Something might happen, or I don't know, they forget or whatever, they get ill, and then if you can't bring it to yourself, then what are you going to do? You're going to create another stressful situation for yourself. Right? Oh, my phone has... So, 22:22, right? That's the time. Thank you very much, guys. I'm going to finish. I'm a bit tired today at this point because I've done a lot today. Thank you very much for listening. My phone has died, even though it's charging. The one that I could see the messages. So now maybe I'm going to... Let me just do it this way. No. How do I do this? How do I flip it now? I can't flip it, can I? Okay, guys, thank you very much for today, and hopefully I'll see you. Thank you very much for listening. Just so you know how to connect with my work. If you want to connect with my work, DM me your email address. There's more to come, obviously, and I'll see you tomorrow. Have a lovely night. Bye-bye.